Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Ignition Time. And some shocking new details emerging about jobs and unemployment benefits. The number of workers unemployed for more than a year has jumped by 250,000 individuals almost. This is incredible. Let's show you this headline on your screen from CNBC. Number of workers unemployed for more than a year jumps by 248,000 in June, all the way up to 2.9 million people, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. This pandemic has made the rich richer and it has made the poor poorer. It has exposed the vulnerabilities, the unfairness, the inequality in our system, because those who need help the most are getting left behind. On the one hand, many people are getting back to work, but on the other hand, the most vulnerable amongst us are the ones who are getting left behind, and this indeed is a problem. Now, what's even more shocking is that this number of 2.9 million people who are long-term unemployed represents almost 29% of all unemployed workers. Think about this for a second. Right now, in our country, in the United States of America, 3 out of every 10 workers who are unemployed have been unemployed for 6 months or more. They are long-term unemployed. On top of that, more than 25 states have ended federal unemployment benefits for all individuals on unemployment, including the long-term unemployed. What is the bottom line? The bottom line is this: 248,000 individuals became long-term unemployed in the month of June. That's a total of 2.9 million individuals who've been unemployed for 6 months or more. This represents 29%, almost 30% of the 10 million individuals who are currently unemployed in the country. Again, 3 out of every 10 people who are unemployed have lost their jobs for 6 months or more and have not been able to find work. Nearly 2.9 million individuals have been jobless for 52 weeks or more, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Let's show you this chart on your screen that represents U.S. job growth. Total non-farm payrolls changed from the previous month. You can see the significant impact as a direct result of COVID in March and April of 2020. And since then, we have indeed started to recover. But the problem is the long-term unemployed, or those who are experiencing joblessness for 6 months or more. This is a very, very challenging time for millions of our fellow Americans who are struggling to put food on the table, who are struggling to make rent, who are struggling to keep the lights on. And what is happening is certain Republican states that are taking away the $300 a week are actually making it harder for these individuals. Here's a quote from Heidi Shierholz, who's the Director of Policy at the Economic Policy Institute and also the former chief economist at the Department of Labor during former President Barack Obama's administration. Heidi says this: there are many people who lost their jobs early on in the recession who've been unemployed ever since. So what is happening? This increase in the long-term unemployment comes despite the fact that we added 850,000 jobs in the month of June, which, by the way, is the most since August 2020. Let's go back to that chart representing US job growth, and you'll see that in August of 2020, we had a lot of job growth. And then if you take a look at the most recent numbers, 850,000 jobs added in June, that is the most since August of 2020. Now, this is good. There are definitely some encouraging signs, but the problem is that all the layoffs that have actually taken place are actually impacting some individuals more than others. Let's shift gears to this chart representing the US unemployment rate over the past 12 years. You can see the surge in unemployment after the 2008 financial crisis, and then unemployment gradually ticked down, and it was at its lowest point in the modern era prior to the pandemic, after which it just surged significantly. So where were we in the start of 2014 as we had completed most of our recovery from the 2008 financial crisis? By the way, it took years, over 5 years, to regain all of those jobs. We were right around 5.6% in 2016. And you can see right before the pandemic hit, in the first quarter of 2020, we were at 3.5% unemployment. 3.5%, that's it. And then when the pandemic hit us, right at the top of the pandemic, in April of 2020, we were at 14.8%. And then over the past several months, the unemployment rate started to go down. And finally, we are where we are now, which is we are at 5.6%. 5.9%. So a jump in the 52-week unemployment rate essentially reflects all of the layoffs that actually happened a year ago. Now, will things start to get better? Yes, but the problem is, and I'm quoting shareholders here, as the overall unemployment rate comes down, I expect the long-term unemployment rate will come down. So the silver lining here is that the long-term unemployment rate should also come down as more and more people get back to work. But the bigger problem here is, again, that 3 out of 10 individuals who are unemployed right now are in a severe financial crisis because they've been unemployed for 6 months or more, in some cases over a year. Now, those out of work for an extended duration are likely to be in the hardest hit industries like leisure, like hospitality, which includes bars and restaurants, which, and this is an interesting point, accounted for 40% of the job gains last month in the month of June. The fact is, however, that industry, the leisure and hospitality industry, is still down by 2.2 million jobs. That's 13% versus the pre-pandemic levels. Now, there are many nuances to this situation. African American workers are more likely to be unemployed for at least 6 months. About 45% were jobless for 27 weeks or more in June. Now, the shares were a bit lower for Asian, Latino, and white workers at 43, 39, and 38% respectively, which means African American workers have been disproportionately impacted. Now, did the enhanced unemployment benefits, the $300 a week, help? Absolutely. All the extra unemployment benefits did help. The federal government stepped in to help. But the fact that over 25 Republican states have decided to end federal unemployment benefits for unemployed, specifically the long-term unemployed, who are an important part of the unemployed population because they've been impacted the most. That means affected residents will continue to face a financial crunch. And also, what's interesting is there was one job opening for every unemployed person in May, according to recent statistics. So this is a complex and evolving situation. The problem is that if an individual has trained all their life to do a certain type of work, as life progresses, it becomes harder for them to change careers. It becomes harder for them to simply abandon what they've done for decades. And this causes long-term unemployment, which is predominant in the leisure and hospitality industry. One of the problems here is that if an individual has worked all their life in a certain career, in a certain sector, in a certain position, maybe you worked in a restaurant, maybe you worked in a hotel, maybe you worked at a bar. Now, all of a sudden, you find that your employer is hiring someone else. Individuals are left out for many reasons. One reason could be age. These are the factors that are starting to cause long-term unemployment because individuals who had steady jobs, who had predictable jobs, who had reliable income, now find themselves left out in the cold by their employers and also by the federal government. To be specific, by their state government, which decided to opt out of federal unemployment benefits. Please click the like button. Please subscribe. Please enable notifications. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next episode of Ignition Time. Don't forget to click like and subscribe. That would mean a lot to us. And let me know what you think of these unbelievable statistics as far as the long-term unemployed is concerned, as far as the ratio of the long-term unemployed that represent 3 out of every 10 unemployed workers at this moment in time in our country. Thank you so much for watching. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next episode of Ignition Time. Take care. Bye.